Alright, so we're going to take a break from coasters. We're going to look at another Intamin here. This is Roaring Rapids. So these water rides, they pretty much just run themselves. So you've got the turntable, which just turns. So basically your job as the operator is you use this button. And what that button does is, back up here. There's the turntable, and then there's a conveyor belt that goes around the outside of the station. And what the purpose of that is, you think about it, if this was just a solid wall and this turntable was turning, the raft would constantly be moving clockwise. And so there's a separate conveyor belt right here at the entrance of the station. And what you do is you wait until the raft rotates to where one of the exit walkways from the raft lines up with the turntable, and then you press the position button. And the position button starts that conveyor belt, and then it just makes its way around. So the way the ride used to work before it got upgraded last year, it was much more difficult to operate. And so the thing is, you can only have the amount of rafts in the station as there are people working. And there's either 1, 2, or 3 people on the turntable, depending on what staffing levels are that day. So if there's one person, only one raft can go around the turntable at a time, because each raft that's in the station needs to be accompanied by a person to watch, see if they fall in, people fall in, or stuff like that. So if there's 2 people, 2 of the rafts can be in the station at once. If there's 3 people, 3 rafts can be in here at once. And so what you used to have to do is, this is the lift stop, this is the lift start, and that's talking about this right here. And so you would have to, as the operator, stand backwards, because right here you're looking at the train tracks. The boats come in over here, behind you and to the right. And so you'd stand backwards, and you put your hands on these, and then you'd watch for a raft to leave the station. And you would have to make sure that no rafts entered this. Too many rafts did not enter the station. So if a raft was coming up and it crests and it starts coming down and there's still a boat in the station, you only got one person working, you have to stop the lift, wait for that raft to exit, and then you start it again. The issue with that is it was constantly turning the lift motor on and off, which caused a lot of trouble lights because there'd be a lot of drive errors. It's not really good for motors to turn on and off constantly. So what they did is they added this right here. And so they added some logic into the ride system. So the lift no longer runs at just a single speed. It can tell how many boats are in the station. And if there are too many boats in the station, it will slow down. And it will creep really slowly. And then once a raft is left, then it'll speed up, come in, you position it, and the lift will slow down again. And if it reaches the end point and there's still too many boats in here, then it'll stop. And then once a boat leaves, it'll start again. And so it's all done by the computer. You don't need to do the backwards operating anymore. Much easier. Turntable stop, turntable start. So there's a line in the station. All the water rides have this. It's this right here. This yellow line on this pole. You might not be able to see it that well. But this is called the critical load point. And when a raft reaches the critical load point, it has to be ready to go. And if it's not ready to go, you have to stop the turntable. So if someone's still buckling their seatbelt, someone will put their cell phone away, something like that, you stop them here. You wait till the attendant gives you the all clear, and then you start the turntable again. Up here is the microphone control. I don't think that this worked. I think that they moved the microphone switch to another to the panel next to this. This is the ride lights, so all the lights will turn on the ride. Just in case you couldn't read ride lights, they wrote it in permanent marker defacing this beautiful panel. And by the way, this is not what the panel was when this ride opened in '83 or whatever. It was much different back then. Moving on over to the red section. So the ride stop on this ride and the flumes is what large running clipper called. Ride stop will stop the turntable, stop the lift. It will raise this gate right here. This is the lift gate. It will lower this gate right here. This is the storage gate. It will lower, I don't know if it does anything to this one. I think it raises this one. This is the turntable gate, and this is the repair pond gate. I don't think that it touched these two, because these two are only really used. So you put this one up if you want to take a boat off and put it into the repair pond. That's right here. So there's 12 individual air pockets inside the inner tube, and if one of them's leaking or not fully inflated, the raft will kind of start to sink, and you can kind of tell, especially if you step on it. And so when that happens, we would just stop loading a boat, wait till maintenance arrived, and then they'd pop this gate up and this one down, pull it in, and then we keep going. And maybe we'd throw another boat on if we had one available to replace it. But anyway, so it turns off all the themed elements, all the wave makers, all that sort of stuff. And boats, as they come down here, so this gate will be up and this one will be down. So all the boats that come after you press the ride stop will go into the storage pond, because you don't want a bunch of rafts building up right here, because they could capsize. And we aren't Six Flags Over Texas. We don't let they don't let rafts capsize like they do over there. I don't know how that park has so many issues, but in the 80s a raft capsized there. So it was fun, because when you had the downtime, if someone pressed the ride stop, and there would be a bunch of boats floating out here. And then once maintenance arrived, and they restarted the ride, you'd have to grab a hook and pull that boat back onto the course. Only problem was if they were floating like out here, because you couldn't reach them. So you had to wait for the raft to kind of dizzy on over to somewhere where you could reach it, because you could, this is a walkway here. It's called the storage pond because this is where you put the boats. You can see where the rafts are. And you can see how many they have versus how many they used to have. But yeah, you pretty much just have to try and grab them. If not, if it was empty, sometimes I'd throw a life buoy with a rope, try and catch it, pull it in. But I usually wouldn't do that if there were people on the ride. I don't want to hit someone. So yeah, that was fun once. I just had a boat floating around out here. I couldn't get to it. The thing is, they're heavy, so if it's like floating away from you and you grab onto it with a pole, you might get pulled in. But so that's a ride stop. The E-stop does all the same thing, but it also cuts power to the pumps. And the pumps are right here. There's 5 of them, but they only use 4. And so the pumps, they dump water in here, and then they dump the rest of the water out here. So when you turn the pumps off, the water stops flowing. The water will flow all the way down the channel, or stop flowing all the way down the channel, so slowly it'll drain. The issue with that, with hitting an E-stop, is you're then raising the water level down in the storage pond and down here below the lift. So kind of catch-22 was if someone fell in down here, you didn't really want to hit an E-stop, because then the water level would raise. So you kind of just let the water keep flowing, throw a life ring at them, hope they didn't get sucked into the pump or something. And then the other issue with the E-stop is it would strand boats, because if there's no water to flow, the boats can't move. And you might wonder, well, why does this E-stop have a key on it? Well, one time there was an E-stop, and there was a boat out here in the tunnel. And so they were trying to evacuate that boat, and some drunk maintenance guy came up and decided he was going to turn the ride back on. So he started up the pumps, and all these people got swept away by this huge rush of water that came at them. So no, I don't think any guests fell in, but a couple employees fell in. They were like holding on by branches and stuff, had to get sucked back in. Luckily there was a supervisor up here that was like, what is going on? Hit the E-stop, you idiot. But after that happened, they put this key on here, so only a certain Certain number of people have this key, not the lower level maintenance guys. Only the people that know what they're doing. So that that can't happen again. This industry very reactive. Anytime something happens, a policy has to change. And that's what happened. That got added on there. So now we take a look over here. These are the gate controls. So to change these gates, you had to be in maintenance mode. The lift gate, reservoir gate, turntable gate, repair gate. In automatic mode, so you could add and remove boats while there were people on the ride. And so if maintenance was doing that, they would use these switches here. And that would, so you're going to storage, from storage, to repair, from repair. And that would raise and lower these gates. Because if you were going from storage, this gate would lower, but this gate would stay down. But if you were going to storage, this gate would come up, so the boats would glide in here. And there was another panel down over here. Can't see it, but that's what the operators would use to raise and lower this gate right here. So this is a pump start, or ride start, pump start, auxiliary start, and auxiliary are all the water elements. Positioner speed, or positioner start, positioner stop, turntable start, turntable stop, e-stop reset, acknowledge. This is the lamp test here. So you press the acknowledge button to acknowledge that all the lights work, which they do. Also, that little tone you hear, that's the trouble light alarm, and that's what it sounds like on most of the rides. So this right here, this is what was added more recently when they updated the lift system. So you can run 4, 6, or 9. You might think that doesn't really seem right. So this is pretty controversial here. So the way it should be is 3, 6, 10, or 3, 6, 9. And the reason for that is so when you got 3 boats, you got one in the station, one coming up the lift, and one's going around the ride course. And that is timed perfectly. When you got 3, literally the third one will come up and in as soon as this one is leaving. But for whatever reason, this is just another one of those Six Flags things. They decide we're going to put the minimum number as 4. And so the only thing that does is now there's 2 on the lift. And so you're just making every single raft have to wait that extra 5 minutes going up the lift because there's too many boats on. And the reason they give for that is because they don't want the perception of too many rafts in the storage pond. And my response to that is I don't think anyone, if someone's going to complain about there not being enough rafts on it, they're going to complain whether there's 5 in here or 6. So I don't understand how adding one more on that doesn't do anything really solves that problem. If we take a look here, so this is another panel. This is located right here. Actually, no, it's like over here. Yeah, it's over here on the wall because this comes out of the station. And so Wavemaker 1, that's the wave machine right here. The walls of water, that's these guys. Those both work. Wavemaker 2 is out here at the island position. I'll talk about that in a second. Wave curtain start, or water curtain start. That is at the entrance of the tunnel. There's supposed to be this wall of water that comes down from the ceiling. And I remembered that as a kid. So when I worked this ride, I asked one of the maintenance guys, I'm like, why doesn't that work? That seems like something that's pretty simple. And he said, well, I could spend all day fixing it, but I think I'm going to go take a nap. And I said, great. I'm glad that we do what's best for our guests. Waterfall start. So the waterfall is down here. It's over here. That's the waterfall. And the water jet, that's something over here too. It didn't work. I asked the same thing, same answer. Well, and you can see there was an element removed. I'm not sure what this is. I asked a bunch of people, no one seemed to remember. These two are removed too, so I'm assuming this is drums 1 and 2, 3 and 4. They must have decided these weren't necessary. Probably because there's not the same volume of boats going through it as there used to be. But the drums, these are the final 2 drums. These are 7 and 8. And these drums, they just sit there and they rotate. And their purpose is, when a raft comes in, if it doesn't go straight onto the lift, it will bump into that, which will cause it to rotate. So it won't get stuck down here. Because you think about it, there's no, none of these right here. It could just kind of get stuck down here with the way the water flows. So these kind of bump it back and forth and get it going on up the lift. I'm not sure where drums 5 and 6 are. They probably don't exist anymore. I think they might be over here. I'm pretty sure. But while we're over here, so this is a position that's always required to be staffed when the ride's in operation. This is called island. And what that position does is you basically just watch the boats go by. But you also have a little control panel with 4 buttons on it, and those 4 buttons control water jets that are over here. So there's one here, one here, one here, and one here. And over time you kind of learn when to push the buttons to get people soaked. So if you ride this ride without this person here, you really don't get all that wet because most of the stuff is broken. That gets you wet. But if you've got a good person here, you will get drenched. But when I worked this ride, only 2 of them worked. Only 2 of the jets worked. One of them was completely broken, and one of them would shoot out like a fart of water, which didn't do anything. It didn't even reach the boat. So what was the point? And you also had an E-step out there in case you saw something, you know, super fishy. And the way you got out there is you come out the station, you climb down the stairs on the lift, you go across this walkway over here, underneath the lift, climb down here, walk around. There's a staircase right here next to the train tracks. So you climb up here, across the train tracks, all the way over here. And then you take this pathway, which is on top of the tunnel, on top of the roof. You aren't supposed to step off the pathway because the roof is so weak that people are afraid that people would fall through it. Because there's one thing that Six Flags doesn't do, that's preventive maintenance on things that aren't directly required by a ride manufacturer. So you walk across here, then you get to a fork in the road. And you can either take that fork left, which takes you to Island, or you can take it right, which takes you to a door. And that door leads into the tunnel. And what used to be there is there was a second island position inside the tunnel. And that person, same job, they would just kind of sit there and watch the boats go by. I mean, this is when you had 20 rafts on here, so you kind of had to keep an eye on things because there was some high volume of people coming through here. But in the early 2000s, when Warner Brothers sold Six Flags, the new company that came in wanted to make a bunch of budget cuts, and they asked to remove a lot of positions that were unnecessary, and this is one that was deemed unnecessary. This right here, the reason it's wider than the rest of the trough, it kind of lets the water flow dissipate, so it's not flowing super fast. That's all that is. And then you got the water cannons here for the guests. This is the overflow queue for rapids. You pretty much never see that used these days. It's just over the bridge. And this is pretty nasty over here, if I'm being honest. So like I was saying, there's 5 pumps. But the 5th one, I've never seen it on. I don't think they use it anymore. I'm not sure why. These boxes right here, you kind of see throughout the ride. A lot of coasters, actually. So you can see it on here, too. There's the conveyor motor. It's right there. So what those are, and that's the control panel right there to lower that gate and raise this one. What was I talking about? Oh, yes. That's for the A-phone. So there's an A-phone here. There's one over there. There's one down in the storage pond. There's one at Island. There's one in the tunnel at that non-existent position. Something else interesting. So this is talk about trouble lights. These right here, these are the monitors, and the TV or the cameras on here, terrible. You can hardly see anything. They're black and white, look like crap. The reason there's a fire extinguisher on here is because there's a spiel that plays constantly that won't turn off. But if you're pressing a certain button on here, it turns it off. So they lay this down on here so they don't have to listen to the spiel. And then the microphone's over here, as well as the microphone controls. Let's see if I can pause it at the right spot. So yes, this is the most severe type of trouble light. And when that happens, the ride shuts down, the water drains. And you can see the trouble light is illuminated solid, and the alarm is playing constantly. And that means that it's a severe trouble light. Actually, this one right here was, I was working the ride one day. I was kind of messing with some buttons, so I was afraid I caused this. But actually, one of the maintenance guys was trying to communicate with the person at Island to test the water blasters, and the person at Island interpreted what his hand signal was as a E-stop, so they pressed the E-stop. There's also this light. I think it's on this roof over here. It's called the can't remember. But it, basically, when the water is draining, this light will be red, and once it's calm, the water's still, it'll be green, and that's when you're allowed to evacuate people if you have to. At the end of the night, maintenance comes up, they put this gate up, and you pull these boats into here. So something else interesting is, so the water drains, and it all drains to this pond right here, this storage pond. And I believe the Flumes uses that pond too, because they share a pump room. I think it's this building here, but I can't remember for sure. It might be over here too. But interesting thing is, in that pump room, which is for these two rides, it also has controls for the pump for the dolphin pool that no longer exists. So that's pretty neat. That's what it looks like with the waterfall. That's what it looks like when the water's draining at the end of the night. You can see there's water in the storage pond because the E-stop was pressed, so it all flows into here before it goes into that reservoir. And all of these platforms are floating, and so as the water level raises, the platforms go up, and as the water level goes down, they go down. And then these things right here are the photo eyes to tell where the rafts are. So, I think that's everything I got for this ride. Hope you learned something.